Early one July morning in 1991, a small group of crop circle researchers stood on a hillside above the English hamlet of Alton Barnes. Mist clung to the wheat fields below. For hours nothing moved. Then, sometime after 3 a.m., one witness described a luminous tube descending from low cloud, narrow at first, then widening as it poured down into the field. To her eyes it looked like a column of fluid light. It touched the ground, spread outward, and within seconds the wheat lay flattened in a precise ring hundreds of feet across. By the time the sun came up, the tube was gone. The circle remained. Within a day, the story was circulating through pubs and newspapers across southern England. Crop circles, once dismissed as odd, isolated curiosities, had become a full-blown mystery. And to some, that night in 1991 looked less like a prank and more like a demonstration from something non-human. Tonight, we open the file on the circle makers, England's geometric harvests. Through the 1980s and early 1990s, the rolling cereal fields of Wiltshire and Hampshire became a kind of seasonal theater. Simple circles had been reported in crops before, occasional rings in barley or wheat that farmers blamed on wind, animals, or odd patches of soil. But starting in the late 1970s, and especially after 1980, the designs began to multiply and evolve. Single circles became clusters. Clusters spun into pictograms, keys, spirals, snowflake-like shapes, and formations that seemed to echo fractal mathematics. The heartland of the phenomenon was the southwest of England, fields within sight of Stonehenge, Avebury, Silbury Hill, and other ancient sites. Tourists came to see the monuments and discovered new ones stamped into the grain. Researchers noticed that formations tended to appear close to roads and popular viewpoints, easy for visitors to reach, and easy for photographers to capture from nearby hills. By the early 90s, crop circles were a dependable part of the British summer. At their height, dozens of new formations were reported every season, not just in England but across Europe and increasingly in North America, Japan, and beyond. The question was no longer whether the patterns were appearing. It was who or what was making them. The tube of light. The Alton Barnes event, like several others from that era, sits at the intersection of observation and interpretation. Investigators that night described the luminous tube pouring down into the field, the wheat seemingly laid flat in seconds, and no obvious sign of human activity. Accounts like this are medium-strength evidence at best, multiple witnesses, but no synchronized video, no instrument readings, and no independent confirmation beyond the group who were already invested in the phenomenon. Still, for many early cerealogists, the experience felt decisive. The formation that appeared vast, crisp-edged, geometrically precise, matched what they had seen from the air in previous summers. If a tube of light could do that in real time, perhaps crop circles really were the result of some exotic energy, a plasma discharge, an atmospheric vortex, or something stranger. Into that gap stepped a physicist with a very specific idea: the plasma vortex. Meteorologist and physicist Terence Meaden spent years developing what he called the plasma vortex model. He started with a simpler picture: small, tightly focused whirlwinds sweeping over undulating terrain like dust devils in a storm. Under the right conditions, he argued, a column of spinning air could flatten crops in a circular pattern. As formations evolved, so did the theory. Meaden proposed that in some cases the vortices might be partially ionized, air charged with electricity, interacting with the Earth's magnetic field. In that version, the vortex became a kind of invisible brush, capable of creating more complex curves as it moved across the field. As a natural explanation, the plasma vortex idea had appeal. It kept the mystery in the realm of meteorology and physics rather than UFOs. It also seemed to fit scattered historical reports of storm-related circles in crops, such as an 1880 letter to Nature describing flattened circles of wheat after a violent storm. But Meaden faced a problem that only grew with every summer. The shapes kept getting more elaborate. Straight lines and right angles appeared. Designs began to incorporate complex symbolic elements, even recognizable icons. Fractal-like snowflakes, shapes resembling DNA helices, and patterns that seemed to reference astronomical diagrams appeared overnight. The more artistic the circles became, the harder it was to square them with an unplanned weather event. Eventually, Meaden conceded that at least highly complex formations were probably made by people, not plasma. If vortices weren't responsible, who was? The men with planks. In September 1991, two middle-aged men from Southampton walked into the global spotlight. Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, self-described pranksters, claimed that back in 1978 they had decided to recreate stories of saucer nests from Australia, UFO landing traces said to leave round impressions in grass. Armed with nothing more than wooden boards, rope, and a homemade sighting device, they started flattening circles in local fields by night. For 13 years, they said, they kept at it, more than 200 formations in total. The media attention that followed each summer only encouraged them. When skeptics doubted their confession, Bauer and Chorley invited journalists to watch them work. In a few hours, under test conditions, they produced a neat circle that an experienced researcher promptly declared genuine before the hoax was revealed. Their claim that they had effectively started the modern crop circle wave didn't cover every formation worldwide. Even they admitted that other people had joined in over time. But the demonstration mattered. It proved that precise, large-scale patterns could be made quickly at night with surprisingly simple tools. In the years that followed, more teams emerged. Some created formations for fun, others for profit. Newspapers and TV shows sponsored competitions, challenging circle makers to produce ever more intricate designs. One high-profile contest in the early '90s organized by The Guardian saw a corporate-backed team calling themselves Masters of the Serial Universe arrive with ladders, boards, and custom-built tools to see how far artistry and planning could go under time pressure. Their results, and many others, demonstrated something important. Given enough preparation, a coordinated team could mimic almost any pattern that appeared in the fields. From a scientific standpoint, this is strong evidence. We have named individuals, documented methods, and replicated results. It doesn't automatically prove that every circle is human-made, but it shows that no exotic physics or non-human intelligence is required to explain even the most intricate designs, the plants themselves. Yet there are parts of the record that do not fit neatly into hoax or plasma vortex. Beginning in the early 1990s, biophysicist W.C. Levengood examined plant samples from inside and outside crop formations. In a 1994 paper in the peer-reviewed journal Physiologia Plantarum, he reported anatomical anomalies in circle plants, elongated or blown nodes, the joints in cereal stems, unusual seed development, and subtle changes in the plant's crystalline structure. Levengood suggested that short bursts of microwave-like energy might have heated moisture inside the stems, softening them so they could bend without snapping, a mechanism that in theory could allow rapid flattening while leaving the plants alive. Follow-up reports from his lab claimed similar anomalies in formations from around the world. For proponents of a non-human force, these findings were a crucial pillar. If the plants were measurably different, Maybe that luminous tube over Alton Barnes was more than imagination. But Levengood's work attracted serious criticism. Skeptical investigators noted methodological problems, small sample sizes, unclear controls, and a tendency to treat the crop circles themselves as proven genuine before analyzing them, a form of circular reasoning. Efforts to replicate his results under blinded conditions were unsuccessful. Mainstream plant scientists pointed out that many of the reported anomalies, like node elongation, can also result from more mundane stressors, wind damage, mechanical flattening, or uneven growth. Levengood's papers remain unusual in that they treat crop circles as an independent variable, but they have not led to a widely accepted new physical mechanism. So we're left with contested data, intriguing but not decisive, and burdened by weak experimental foundations. Art, folklore, and the need for messages. While scientists and skeptics debated, the fields themselves became an open-air gallery. Some formations clearly referenced human culture: hearts, arrows, stylized alien faces, corporate logos, even coded messages in binary. Others leaned into mathematics, Mandelbrot-like fractals, representations of the Fibonacci sequence, star-like snowflakes with self-similar arms. Pilots flying over Wiltshire in the mid-90s captured images that looked less like weather scars and more like carefully planned prints. Visitors read meaning into the shapes. One pattern was said to resemble a DNA double helix, prompting speculation that it carried a message about human genetics or perhaps an alien genome. Another was interpreted as a schematic of planetary orbits, a kind of cosmic calling card. A web-like circle was compared to a spider's web. If a spider can weave such structures by instinct, some asked, could an unseen intelligence be doing the same in wheat? In this cultural layer, the strength of the evidence shifts. We move from physical traces to symbolism, psychology, and folklore. Stories about strange lights, humming noises, and even beings in or near the formations often emerge after the fact. They're difficult to test and easy to shape in hindsight. At the same time, crop circles began to generate real money. Tour operators led paying visitors through fields. Authors sold books tying formations to everything from ley lines to apocalyptic prophecy. Circle-making teams started accepting commissions from advertisers. As one Smithsonian profile put it, crop circles evolved from an unexplained phenomenon into the art of the hoax, land art whose value depended on keeping at least some doubt alive. Money and belief both complicate the search for truth. They create incentives to keep the mystery unsolved. So what do we do with this file, these tubes of light, planks and ropes, anomalous nodes, and fractal spirals? Crop circles as human land art. The strongest evidence supports this view. Bauer and Chorley demonstrated that ordinary people using simple tools could create convincing circles quickly, and their confession is backed by contemporary media, on-site tests, and later analysis. Independent teams, including MIT graduate students and organized hoaxing competitions, have reproduced many of the supposed hallmarks of genuine formations: crisp edges, graceful curves, even subtle stem bends under controlled conditions. The geographic pattern, formations clustering near roads, tourist routes, and heritage sites, fits human convenience better than random meteorology. And there is no clear, well-documented case of a complex modern formation appearing where motivated artists could not plausibly have worked overnight. From a skeptical evidentiary standpoint, this explanation accounts for nearly everything we see, but it doesn't fully capture why the story became so powerful. Crop circles as misunderstood natural phenomena. Meaden's plasma vortex model and similar ideas involving ball lightning or other rare atmospheric effects Try to keep the mystery within known physics. Imagine a spinning tornado of electrified air, its outer edge hot enough to soften stems, its motion guided by terrain, like an invisible CNC machine carving patterns into a living canvas. This analogy helps us picture how a storm might etch a ring into crops. It struggles when the formations look like circuit diagrams or symbolic art. Even Meaden acknowledged that his model couldn't credibly produce the intricate pictograms of the 1990s. Simple circles in storm-damaged fields may well have natural causes. The record doesn't require a single explanation for every flattened patch of wheat. But as an answer to the full phenomenon, the plasma vortex remains incomplete. Crop circles as messages from elsewhere. The most speculative interpretation is also the most culturally persistent, that at least some formations are communications from non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or some emergent Earth force. Here, evidence is weakest. Claims of rapid, light-based circle creation rely on uncorroborated eyewitness accounts. UFO sightings over fields are common in regions already primed by media coverage. When researchers have tried to separate circles with clear human signatures from those said to be genuine, the criteria tend to be subjective. Cleanliness of lay, absence of obvious track marks, or the emotional impression the site produces. No robust, independently verifiable marker has emerged that reliably distinguishes non-human circles from confirmed man-made ones. And when investigators have declared a formation beyond human capability, hoaxers have repeatedly stepped forward to show otherwise. Yet the idea of messages in the fields refuses to die. It taps a deep desire that somewhere above the noise of modern life, a larger intelligence might be leaving signs, just subtle enough that only the attentive will notice. When we strip the record down to what can be documented, a picture emerges. We know that human teams using boards, ropes, GPS, and planning can create almost any crop formation we have seen, quickly, quietly, and with remarkable precision. We know that confessions, competitions, and experiments account for a substantial fraction of the circles, especially the elaborate pictograms of the last 40 years. We know that mainstream scientific reviews find no necessity for exotic forces. All observed characteristics are compatible with human causation. We also know that a small subset of reports, plant anomalies, rapid appearance stories, lights over fields, remain messy, underdocumented, or contested. They do not prove a new physics, but they leave loose threads. In the end, we're left with two broad readings. Either crop circles are a global, evolving form of landscape art, sometimes mischievous, sometimes commercial, sometimes almost reverent, that has successfully impersonated a mystery for decades. Or they are mostly that, with perhaps a handful of events still not fully explained by pranks or storms, reminding us that even in the age of GPS and drones, a field of wheat under a summer sky can still host something we do not entirely understand. The file doesn't close cleanly. The circles will likely keep appearing as long as there are artists willing to walk the night and audiences willing to believe. Because every mystery hides a truth, whether it lies in the physics of the air, the hands that hold the planks, or the patterns our minds insist on finding in the grain.